After years of being my family's personal ATM and emotional punching bag, I got a text from my mom that broke me. "You're not coming to the wedding. Lily's family doesn't want you there." Just like that, I was cut out of my sister's wedding. The same wedding I had paid for with a $9,000 venue deposit when Dad's check bounced. The same wedding where I built their website, managed all the vendors, and stayed up at 2 a.m. listening to Lily's meltdowns about centerpieces. For 2 years, I gave them everything. My money, my time, my skills. When I asked to be appreciated, they told me I was too sensitive. Now that all the bills were paid and everything was set up, they decided they didn't need me anymore. They used me, mocked me behind my back, and threw me away. But they forgot one thing. I still controlled every aspect of their perfect day, and I was about to remind them exactly who they were dealing with. After years of being my family's safety net, I received a text message from my mother that changed everything. "You're not coming to the wedding. Lily's family doesn't want you there." No explanation, no apology, just 12 cold words dismissing 2 years of sacrifice and support. I stared at my phone, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. I had been the responsible one in our family for as long as I could remember. The one they called when checks bounced or websites needed building or emotional meltdowns required a steady hand. My sister Lily's wedding had been no different. "We're putting you down as the venue guarantor," my father had said casually over dinner 2 years ago, sliding the contract across the table. Just a formality. That formality became a $9,000 deposit when his check bounced 3 days later. I covered it without complaint, just like I'd covered my mother's car repair last Christmas and my sister's rent twice last year. Just like I'd built their wedding website, set up vendor payment portals, and spent countless nights troubleshooting their registry when Lily complained it wasn't user-friendly enough. "You're so good with all this technical stuff," she'd say, squeezing my shoulder with that practiced smile. "What would we do without you?" What indeed? I built spreadsheets tracking every expense, created timelines, researched vendors. When Lily had panic attacks about centerpieces at 2 a.m., I answered. When my parents argued about the guest list, I mediated. When deposits came due, my bank account emptied. "You're too sensitive," my mother would say whenever I mentioned feeling unappreciated. This is what family does. Yesterday, I noticed an unfamiliar charge on my credit card, $3,200 to a photographer I hadn't approved. When I called Lily, she laughed it off. "Oh, I just used your card info from the venue form. We'll pay you back after the honeymoon." I had nodded and said nothing, swallowing the familiar feeling of being used. But this morning's text was different. This wasn't asking for more. This was saying I wasn't even worth including. I typed back a single word. Understood. And for the first time, I truly did understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. The text message kept flashing before my eyes, cold and dismissive. 2 years of planning, thousands of dollars, countless hours, all erased with 12 words. I pulled out my laptop and began reviewing our correspondence. Emails where Lily demanded changes to the website. Texts where my father borrowed money for vendor deposits. Voice messages from my mother complaining about my attitude when I asked about repayment. The more I looked, the more patterns emerged. I was useful, not valued. A resource, not a brother or son. I checked my banking records. Over the past 2 years, I'd contributed $23,450 to my sister's wedding, not including countless hours of free labor. Money I had saved meticulously while they lived paycheck to paycheck, always with an excuse for why they couldn't contribute more. As dawn broke, I made coffee and stared out the window, thinking about all the times I'd been told I was too sensitive when I expressed hurt. All the times I'd been excluded from family dinners but called immediately when bills came due. I pulled up the website I'd created for the wedding. My admin access still worked. I had built everything, the RSVP system, the registry, the vendor, payment portal, all linked to my email as the technical contact. I downloaded everything, guest lists, vendor contracts, payment receipts, planning documents. I saved every email and text message. I took screenshots of bank transfers. Then, Methodically, I began to make changes. First, I transferred ownership of the wedding website to a new email account only I could access, removing the family as administrators. Then I revoked all payment authorizations linked to my credit cards and bank accounts. I logged into the venue portal where I was still listed as the deposit guarantor. I didn't cancel. That would be too obvious and might allow them to recover. Instead, I modified the contract, removing the rain contingency option they'd insisted on. The long-range forecast showed storms. For the wedding registry I'd created, I downloaded the complete gift list and addresses, then systematically deleted the entire registry. My phone rang. Lily. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, the website looks weird. Can you fix it? Also, did you get Mom's text? It's not personal, it's just that Jason's family is really traditional and they want to keep the wedding small. You understand, right? Anyway, call me about the website. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a text to Kristen, my sister's former colleague who'd been abruptly cut from the bridal party after planning the entire shower. Would you like to have dinner tomorrow night? I'd value your perspective on something. She responded almost immediately. I thought you'd never ask. 7 o'clock at Marcel's? That night, I made a list of everything I had access to. The venue contract under my name, the wedding website administrator privileges, vendor contact information, the guest list with email addresses, the registry system, and payment portals. Every piece represented leverage, information I could use. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about how to help my family. I was thinking about justice. The next morning, my mother called twice. I didn't answer. My father texted, asking about the website issues. I didn't respond. Lily left 3 voicemails, each more frantic than the last, about vendor confirmations suddenly disappearing from the system. I felt a cold calm settling over me. Years of being the responsible one, the helper, the fixer, all while being treated as an afterthought, had come to an end. Not with a confrontation or an argument, but with silence. My silence. As I prepared to meet Kristen, I knew I was standing at a crossroads. Behind me lay years of exploitation disguised as family obligation. Ahead lay the unknown. I was ready to step forward. Kristen met me at Marcel's, a quiet restaurant downtown, where we wouldn't run into any of Lily's friends. I had always liked Kristen. She was straightforward in a way my family never was. I was surprised to hear from you, she said, stirring her martini, especially this close to the wedding. I'm not going to the wedding, I said simply. I've been uninvited. Her eyes widened slightly. Well, that's interesting considering how much you've done for it. That's partly why I wanted to talk to you. I feel like I'm missing something. Kristen set down her glass. What exactly did they tell you? That Lily's in-laws don't want me there. She laughed, not unkindly. That's not true. I'm still friends with Jason's sister. They specifically asked about you last month, wondering why you weren't more involved in the public aspects of the wedding when you were handling so much behind the scenes. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but after how they treated me, she leaned forward. I overheard Lily and Jason at the engagement party. They were laughing about their useful idiot, their words, not mine, who would handle all the technical and financial stuff but wouldn't need to be included in the actual celebration. The restaurant seemed to grow quieter. They said once everything was paid for and set up, they'd find a way to cut you out. Kristen's eyes were sympathetic. I thought it was awful, but I never imagined they'd actually do it. And my parents? Your father was there for that conversation. He didn't object. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly, processing. Did Lily ever say why? Kristen hesitated. She said having you there would remind everyone who actually made the wedding possible, and she wanted the day to be about her generosity and taste, not your money and work. I sat back, oddly calm. Thank you for telling me the truth. What are you going to do? I smiled slightly. Accept their decision, but on my terms. When I returned home, I continued my methodical work, now with complete clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this wasn't family politics. This was calculated exploitation followed by casual disposal. I spent the next 3 days preparing a comprehensive document. It contained screenshots of text messages where they'd discussed using me, banking records of every dollar I'd contributed, and their own words about me. I included Kristen's statement in writing, which she had willingly provided, detailing what she had heard at the engagement party. My phone continued to ring. The wedding was 10 days away, and my family was panicking. The venue had called them about payment issues. The registry was gone. The wedding website administrator wouldn't respond to their emails. I leased a cottage on the coast, paid 3 months in advance, and began packing my essentials. Everything else, furniture, electronics, books, I arranged to have donated. I had no intention of giving my family anything else to take. On the 4th day, my father showed up at my apartment. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded when I opened the door. "Your sister is having a breakdown. The venue says our rain option is gone, and half the vendors are saying they need to reconfirm payment methods." I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. His face was red with anger, not concern. Not once did he ask why I hadn't been answering calls or mention the text from my mother. "I'm accepting your decision," I said calmly. "What decision?" "That I'm not coming to the wedding. That I'm not part of this family when it's inconvenient." His expression shifted. "Don't be dramatic. Your mother just meant—" "I know exactly what she meant," I interrupted. "And what Lily meant at the engagement party when she called me her useful idiot." My father's face paled. "Who told you that? Does it matter? It's true, isn't it?" He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, your sister says things sometimes. She doesn't mean them. We need you to fix this. The wedding is in 10 days. "No." I stepped back from the door. "I've already fixed it. For myself." I closed the door on his protests and locked it. That night, I finalized my document, now titled, Wedding Financing and Planning Full Disclosure. It was 48 pages long and included a detailed accounting of every dollar spent, every hour worked, and every communication about my role in the wedding. The evidence was damning. Not just my financial contributions, but the systematic way my family had exploited my skills and resources while planning to exclude me from the celebration. There were screenshots of texts between Lily and Jason, laughing about how they had trained me to respond to late-night demands. There were emails from my mother to relatives explaining my absence from family photos because I was busy working on wedding stuff. Most damning was the section I titled The Exclusion, which included the text message from my mother, Kristen's statement about what she overheard, and a timeline showing how my exclusion happened only after all major financial obligations had been fulfilled. I created a distribution list that included every wedding guest, every vendor, every family member and friend involved in the wedding. I scheduled the email to send automatically the night before the rehearsal dinner. Then I continued packing. My new life awaited. The next 3 days passed in a blur of practical arrangements. I closed bank accounts and opened new ones at a different bank. I changed my phone number, keeping the old one active just long enough to receive any important non-family communications. I set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box in my new coastal town. My family's attempts to contact me grew more frantic. Lily showed up crying at my apartment, but I wasn't home. My mother left voicemails alternating between guilt trips and demands. My father sent increasingly aggressive texts threatening to cut me off if I didn't grow up and help fix this mess. They still didn't understand. They had already cut me off with that text message. I was simply making it official. On the morning of the day before the rehearsal dinner, I loaded the last of my possessions into my car. I looked around the empty apartment where I had lived for 3 years, the place my family had come when they needed money or technical support or emotional comfort, but never just to visit. I felt lighter than I had in years. At exactly 8 p.m. that night, as I drove toward the coast with the windows down and music playing, my automated email would deploy. By morning, everyone connected to the wedding would know exactly what kind of people were getting married. What kind of parents had raised them, and what kind of brother had been discarded when his usefulness ended. I wasn't seeking drama or confrontation. I was seeking truth and freedom. As I crossed the state line, I felt the first real smile spread across my face in months. The road ahead was open, and for once, it was mine alone. By midnight, I had reached the coastal cottage. It was small but charming, with weathered gray shingles and a porch that faced the ocean. The sound of waves crashing against the shore greeted me as I stepped out of my car, stretching after the long drive. Inside, I set up my laptop on the kitchen table and connected to the Wi-Fi I had arranged to have activated before my arrival. I checked my email. My scheduled message had been sent at exactly 8 p.m. to 143 recipients. Everyone from distant relatives to Lily's college roommates to the wedding planner now had a detailed account of what had really been happening behind the scenes. The email included a brief personal message. Dear friends and family of Lily and Jason, I regret to inform you that I will not be attending my sister's wedding as previously planned. For transparency, I am sharing information that may impact your experience at this event. As the financial guarantor and technical administrator for most aspects of this wedding, I feel it's important you understand the circumstances. The rest was all evidence: screenshots, financial records, witness statements, and the text message that had ended it all. I had not editorialized or added emotional commentary. The facts spoke for themselves. My old phone, which I had brought with me for this purpose alone, began lighting up with notifications almost immediately after the email went out. I watched as the missed calls and messages accumulated, but didn't read any of them. There was nothing left to say. I powered off the phone, removed the SIM card, and placed it in a drawer. Tomorrow, after I was certain the wedding was underway, I would dispose of it permanently. I slept deeply that night for the first time in months. The morning of the rehearsal dinner dawned clear and bright on the coast, though the weather forecast for my hometown showed thunderstorms moving in, right on schedule for tomorrow's outdoor ceremony. I made coffee and took it out to the porch, watching seagulls dive into the waves. My new phone rang. It was Kristen. "It's absolute chaos," she said without preamble. "Your email hit like a bomb." "Are you okay?" I asked. I genuinely cared about Kristen. She had been collateral damage in my sister's machinations before I was. "I'm fine. I wasn't going to the wedding anyway, but you should know what's happening." She told me that several relatives had called Lily and my parents demanding explanations. 2 aunts had canceled their flights. The maid of honor had posted a vague but pointed message on social media about supporting users and manipulators. Jason's parents were reportedly reconsidering their financial contributions after learning how much I had paid. "The rehearsal dinner is tonight," Kristen continued. "Half the guests are threatening not to come." "That's their choice," I said calmly. "Your mother has been calling everyone saying you're mentally unstable and made it all up." I had expected this. The documentation speaks for itself. "Yes, it does." Kristen paused. "I've never seen anything like this, but I have to say they earned it." We talked for a few more minutes. She told me she was thinking of moving to the West Coast for a job opportunity, and I wished her well. After we hung up, I realized I probably wouldn't speak to her again. Her role in my life, like so many others, had been transitory, but unlike my family, she had treated me with respect. I spent the day exploring my new town. It was small, but vibrant, with art galleries and bookstores lining the main street. I found a coffee shop with a help wanted sign and picked up an application, thinking it might be a good way to meet people. In the local bookstore, I noticed they had a collection of rare first editions in a glass case. The owner, an older woman with silver hair, saw me admiring them. "Are you interested in rare books?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I did some digital archiving work in college." Her eyes lit up. "We've been trying to digitize our collection for years. Do you have experience with that sort of thing?" I smiled. "Actually, I do. By the time the rehearsal dinner would have been starting back home, I was having dinner with Marion, the bookstore owner, discussing a potential part-time position helping with their digital archive. It felt good to have my skills valued for their own sake, not as a resource to be exploited. When I returned to the cottage that evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, watching the moon rise over the water. I thought about what might be happening at the rehearsal dinner, the awkward explanations, the whispered conversations, the damage control. I felt no joy in their discomfort, but no regret either. Actions have consequences. My family had never faced any for their treatment of me. Until now. My new phone pinged with an email alert. It was from an unfamiliar address, but the subject line read, "I support you." I opened it. "I'm Jason's cousin. I received your email and wanted you to know that several of us have decided not to attend the wedding. What they did to you was unconscionable. I hope you find peace." I didn't respond, but something in me relaxed a little more. Truth was powerful. It created ripples that couldn't be controlled or predicted. I slept soundly again that night, lulled by the sound of waves and the knowledge that I had taken back my power, not through confrontation or drama, but through simple, unvarnished truth. The next morning, the wedding day, dawned gray and stormy on the coast. I checked the weather app on my phone and saw that the thunderstorms had indeed arrived in my hometown as predicted. The outdoor ceremony would be a wash. I made breakfast and took my coffee to the porch again, despite the drizzle. There was something cleansing about the rain. I had always avoided weather like this before, worried about how it would affect plans or schedules. Now I simply experienced it. Marian had invited me to dinner that evening to discuss the archiving project further. I was looking forward to it. The future stretched before me, undefined but full of possibilities that weren't tied to obligation or manipulation. I thought about the wedding that would be happening in a few hours, the guests who might not show up, the vendors who might be demanding new payment methods, the registry that didn't exist, the website that no longer functioned, the rain with no contingency plan. And then I realized I didn't need to think about it anymore. It wasn't my problem. It never should have been. I turned my face up to the light rain and smiled. This was day one of my new life, and I was ready for whatever came next. Dinner with Marian that evening proved to be more than just a job discussion. The bookstore owner introduced me to several of her friends, all longtime residents of the coastal town who welcomed me warmly. By the end of the night, I had not only secured a part-time position helping digitize the rare book collection, but had also received invitations to a local history group and a beachside yoga class. "We're always happy to have new blood in town," said Marian as we finished our dessert. "Especially someone with your skills." "Thank you for the opportunity," I replied, genuinely touched by the simple human connection that asked nothing of me beyond what I freely offered. I walked back to my cottage under clearing skies, the storm having passed. My phone had no messages from unknown numbers, no desperate pleas, no angry accusations. Whatever chaos had unfolded at my sister's wedding had done so without me. For the next week, I focused entirely on settling into my new life. I arranged the cottage to my liking, began work at the bookstore, and established a routine that included morning walks on the beach. I spoke to no one from my past and felt no urge to check social media or news from my hometown. It was during my second week at the bookstore that I received an unexpected visitor. I was cataloging a collection of maritime maps when Marian called me to the front. "There's someone asking for you," she said, her expression concerned. "A woman. Says she's your aunt." My heart rate increased slightly, but I remained calm. "Which aunt?" "Elizabeth," she said. Aunt Elizabeth, my mother's sister. The family peacemaker who had always been kind to me, but never stood up for me either. I considered asking Marian to tell her I wasn't available, but curiosity won out. "Thank you. I'll speak with her." Aunt Elizabeth was standing by the front counter looking out of place in her tailored city clothes. When she saw me, relief washed over her face. "There you are. We've been so worried." I kept my expression neutral. "How did you find me?" You're Email to Kristen about the job recommendation. She mentioned the town name. I've been driving up and down the coast for 2 days asking in every shop. Persistent. I'd give her that. What do you want, Elizabeth? She seemed taken aback by my directness. To check on you, of course, and to tell you what happened. I don't need to know what happened. I think you do. She glanced around the bookstore. Is there somewhere we can talk? I led her to a coffee shop down the street. We ordered and sat at a table near the back. I said nothing, waiting for her to speak. The wedding was a disaster, she finally said. Only half the guests showed up. It poured rain with no tent option. The venue manager was furious about contract changes. Vendors kept asking for payment confirmation. I sipped my coffee, unmoved. Lily had a complete meltdown at the ceremony. Jason's parents nearly pulled out entirely after reading your email. Your father had to write a check on the spot to cover the remaining costs. Sounds stressful, I said flatly. Elizabeth studied. Mean you don't care at all, do you? Should I? They're your family. No. I set down my cup carefully. They made it very clear I'm not family. I'm a resource. Elizabeth had the grace to look ashamed. What they did was wrong. I'm not defending it. But the fallout has been extreme. Actions have consequences. Your mother hasn't left the house in 2 weeks. The social humiliation has been total. Everyone knows what they did to you. I felt no satisfaction at this news, but no sympathy either. Again, why are you here? Elizabeth sighed. They want to make amends. They've asked me to convince you to come home to talk it out. There's nothing to talk out. I'm not interested in amends. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting a birthday, I said evenly. Systematically exploiting someone for years, mocking them behind their back, and then discarding them when they're no longer useful isn't a mistake, it's who they are. Elizabeth was silent for a long moment. You've changed. I've stopped accepting what they've always done. And you're happier? I considered the question honestly. Yes, I am. She nodded slowly. I can see that. She pulled a sealed envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. Your mother asked me to give you this, and to tell you that whatever you decide, they love you. I left the envelope on the table as we said goodbye. Elizabeth hugged me briefly and said she wouldn't tell them where I was unless I gave permission. I believed her. After she left, I picked up the envelope and returned to the bookstore. Marion noticed it in my hand but said nothing. The rest of the day passed normally as I cataloged books and helped a few customers. That evening, I sat on my porch with the unopened envelope. The sunset painted the ocean in shades of orange and pink. I turned the envelope over in my hands, feeling the weight of it. Whatever was inside, apologies, explanations, more manipulation, couldn't change what had happened. I stood up, walked to the metal fire pit on the edge of my small yard, and dropped the envelope inside. I struck a match and watched as the paper curled and blackened, carrying my past into smoke and ash. 2 months passed. I settled more deeply into my coastal life, expanding my role at the bookstore to include managing their website and online sales. I adopted a dog from the local shelter, a middle-aged mixed breed with soulful eyes who loved our beach walks as much as I did. I made friends gradually, real friends who wanted nothing from me but my company. I joined a community garden, learned to paddleboard, dated casually. For the first time in my life, I was building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Occasionally, I would receive an email or letter forwarded through various channels from my family. I deleted or discarded them without reading. Whatever they had to say couldn't undo what they had done, and I had no interest in giving them another chance to hurt me. Then came the certified letter from my father's attorney. I almost didn't sign for it, but legal communications seemed potentially important. Inside was notification that my father was selling the family home, the house I had grown up in, and legally I was entitled to a portion of the proceeds as an heir. The letter included a check for a substantial amount, and a personal note from my father expressing hope that this gesture would open the door to reconciliation. He mentioned that my mother's health had deteriorated due to stress and regret, and that Lily's marriage was already showing signs of trouble. I looked at the check for a long time. Then I wrote "void" across it in large letters, placed it in a return envelope with a brief note. "I neither want nor need your money. Do not contact me again." That evening, as my dog and I walked along the shore at sunset, I realized something important. My revenge hadn't been about causing them pain. It had been about reclaiming my dignity and my future. The truth I had shared had consequences for them, yes, but my real victory was in walking away completely. Their guilt, their social embarrassment, their damaged relationships, none of it was my concern anymore. I was free in a way I had never been when tied to them by hope or obligation. I threw a stick for my dog and watched him bound joyfully into the shallow waves. My life now was built on my terms. No manipulation, no exploitation, no emotional blackmail. As the sun sank below the horizon, I felt at peace. Not because they had suffered, but because I no longer cared whether they did or not. That was the true revenge. My complete and permanent indifference to the people who had once held so much power over me. 6 months after I had settled in the coastal town, Marion offered me a full-time position managing the bookstore's archives and digital presence. The part-time job had evolved as I modernized their systems and expanded their online sales platform. Now they wanted me to head a new preservation project for historical documents related to the town's maritime history. "You've got a gift for this work," Marion told me as we discussed the position over coffee in the store's reading nook. "And frankly, you've become part of the community here. We'd love to keep you." I accepted without hesitation. The cottage I had been renting came up for sale around the same time, and with my savings, no longer being drained by my family's constant needs, I was able to make a down payment. At 32, I finally had a home that was truly mine. My dog, Max, adjusted well to permanent residence. He had his favorite spots on the beach, his friends at the dog park, and a comfortable routine. I found myself reflecting on how my life had transformed in just 6 months, from being emotionally and financially exploited to building a peaceful existence centered on work I enjoyed and relationships that added value to my life. The certified letter from my father arrived on a Tuesday morning. I recognized the law firm's name on the return address and considered tossing it, unopened, into the trash. But some lingering sense of responsibility, or perhaps curiosity, made me sign for it. Inside was a formal letter from the attorney explaining that my father was facing significant health challenges and wished to make amends before his condition worsened. There was a handwritten note from my father as well, its shaky penmanship either a sign of emotional distress or physical decline. "Son, I know we have no right to ask anything of you. What we did was unforgivable. Your mother is not well, and doctors tell me my heart is failing. Lily's marriage ended after 3 months. We've lost so much, and most of it we deserved to lose. But please, if you could find it in your heart to at least speak with us even once, it would mean everything. We're not the same people who hurt you. We've learned a hard lesson." The letter included a phone number and an address for a rental house, not the family home I had grown up in. Apparently, they had sold it, just as my father's previous legal communication had indicated. I placed the letter in my desk drawer without responding. That evening, as Max and I took our usual walk along the shore, I turned the situation over in my mind. My father claimed they had changed, that they had learned from what happened. Perhaps they had. Consequences often teach the lessons nothing else can. But I had changed too. I no longer needed their approval or acceptance. I no longer felt responsible for managing their emotions or fixing their problems. Most importantly, I no longer felt the ache of wanting to belong to a family that had never truly wanted me. When we returned home, I took the letter from my drawer, wrote "Return to Sender" on the envelope, and placed it in my outgoing mail. Whatever closure my father sought would have to come from within himself, not from me. A week later, I received a call from an unknown number while at work. Normally, I would let it go to voicemail, but I was expecting a call from a book dealer about a rare first edition. Hello? Please don't hang up. My mother's voice, smaller and more fragile than I remembered. Please just listen for a moment. I said nothing, but I didn't end the call. Your father had a heart attack yesterday, she continued after a moment. He's stable now, but it was serious. Before they took him to surgery, all he talked about was you, about how he needed to make things right. Still, I remained silent. I know you returned his letter. I know you want nothing to do with us. We've accepted that. But I thought you should know, in case. Her voice broke slightly. In case you might have regrets later if the worst happens. Is that all? I finally asked, my voice even. Yes, she whispered. That's all. I hope he recovers, I said, and I meant it. I didn't wish death or suffering on any of them. I simply wished them out of my life. Please don't call this number again. I ended the call and took a deep breath. Then I returned to cataloging the maritime maps that had just arrived from an estate sale, losing myself in the careful, precise work that had become my specialty. That evening I received an email from Kristen, who occasionally kept in touch, from her new life on the West Coast. I thought you should know your sister is back in town, she wrote. She's been telling anyone who will listen that her divorce is your fault because you sabotaged her wedding. Most people aren't buying it, especially after everything that came out. But she's desperate to rebuild her image. Thought you might want a heads up in case she tries to contact you. I thanked Kristen for the information and assured her I had no plans to engage with Lily or anyone else from my past. I had built strong boundaries, and I intended to maintain them. 3 days later, a formal invitation arrived for the opening of a new exhibition at the town's small historical society museum. The exhibition featured the maritime maps I had been cataloging, now beautifully displayed alongside other artifacts telling the story of the town's seafaring history. My name was listed prominently as the archivist who had preserved and researched the collection. The opening night was well attended by the community. As I stood beside a glass case containing a captain's log from 1879 that I had painstakingly digitized, Marion approached with an older gentleman I didn't recognize. This is the archivist I was telling you about, she said to him. He's transformed our entire preservation system. The man introduced himself as the director of the state's historical archives. We're always looking for specialists with your skills, he said, handing me his card. If you're ever interested in consulting work, please call me. As we discussed potential projects, I caught sight of a familiar figure near the entrance. My sister Lily, looking thinner and more tense than I remembered, scanning the room. Our eyes met briefly before I deliberately turned away, continuing my conversation as if I had seen nothing of significance. Later, as I was speaking with a group of local history enthusiasts, I felt a presence at my elbow. You look well, Lily said quietly. I glanced at her, then back to the group I had been addressing. Excuse me, I said to them, stepping away to a less crowded area of the gallery. Lily followed. What are you doing here? I asked, keeping my voice low and neutral. Mom told me where you were, she admitted. After Dad's heart attack, I thought maybe we could talk. We have nothing to talk about. She flinched slightly. I know I hurt you. Yes, you did. All of you did. Deliberately and repeatedly. I'm trying to apologize. I'm not interested in your apology. It doesn't change anything. Lily's composure began to crack. My marriage fell apart. Dad is sick. Mom barely functions. Our family is destroyed. That was your choice, I said simply. Not mine. How can you be so cold? We're still family. No, we're not. You made that very clear with a text message. Tears filled her eyes. One mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was years of exploitation culminating in a final betrayal. You called me your useful idiot, remember? Lily paled. Who told you that? Does it matter? It's what you thought, what you said, what you believed. I was stressed about the wedding. I said things I didn't mean. I looked at her without emotion. The wedding that I paid for. The wedding that I planned. The wedding that fell apart without me. Several people nearby had started to notice our conversation. I saw Marion watching with concern from across the room. "Please," Lily whispered. "I have nothing left." "That's not my problem," I said quietly. "Your choices led you here. Now please leave before you make a scene at my professional event." She stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the gallery. Marion approached me as I rejoined the main group. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said with a genuine smile. "Everything is fine." That night, as I sat on my porch watching the moonlight on the water, I felt a strange sense of completion. The confrontation with Lily hadn't brought anger or pain, just calm certainty that I had made the right choice in walking away. My family had broken apart under the weight of their own actions. Their reputation, their relationships, their sense of security, all had crumbled once the truth was exposed, and the person they had exploited was no longer there to hold things together. And I had built something new, something honest and valuable, something that belonged entirely to me. Some debts can't be repaid. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. The ink of their decision was permanent. So was mine.